I need Reddit to tell me I'm not crazy. Or that I am. At this point, honestly, either would be a relief. I'm 29F, a financial analyst, and 4 months ago, my husband Reeve died suddenly from a brain aneurysm. We were together 4 years, married for 2. I paid the mortgage on our condo downtown. I covered most of our bills. I did it because I loved him and because that's what partnership means. You show up, you carry your share, sometimes you carry more. I wasn't keeping score. Reeve was a graphic designer, talented, charming, magnetic in the way that made every room feel like it had been waiting for him to arrive. He made about 1/3 of what I made, and I genuinely never cared. We had a life I was proud of. What I didn't have was the full picture of that life. I found out the rest of it exactly 11 days after I buried him, when a woman named Sloan appeared at my front door. 7 months pregnant, unbothered, apparently rehearsed. The first words out of her mouth were, "I think it's time we talked. You were his routine. I was his escape." I want you to understand the specific architecture of that sentence. My husband's ashes were still on the mantel. I had been a widow for 11 days, and this woman stood in my doorway, one hand resting on her stomach, and delivered that line like it was a gift. I am a numbers person. I work in logic and data and cold precision, but something in my brain just shorted out, like a calculator asked to divide by 0. I stepped back and let her walk into my living room. That was my first mistake. Sloan was 27, a freelance creative consultant, which based on all available evidence meant she attended networking brunches and posted captions about manifesting on Instagram. She was pretty in the way that seemed specifically engineered to make grieving widows feel worse, and she had this serene, untouchable energy I would later identify as either enlightenment or sociopathy. I genuinely could not tell. She sat on my couch, looked around the apartment like she was taking mental inventory, and said, "He talked about this place. He said it never quite felt like home to him." And then again, "You were his routine. I was his escape." The mental gymnastics required to say that sentence, in that apartment, to that widow, 11 days after that funeral, deserve an Olympic gold medal, a Lifetime Achievement Award, and a strongly worded letter from the International Court of Justice. I told her to leave. She did. But she left her phone number on my coffee table, because of course she did, and said at the door, "We're going to need to figure out some things. For the baby. I hope you can be mature about this." I closed the door. I sat down on the floor. And then I called my attorney. Because here is what nobody tells you about grief. Sometimes it sharpens you. Sometimes losing everything strips away all the soft, forgiving parts and leaves something much more precise underneath. I was going to need that precision. The next several weeks were a masterclass in escalation. Sloan was not, as I had briefly hoped, going to float back into the universe on a current of affirmations and leave me alone. She had a plan, and the plan involved installing herself as a permanent fixture in my life through a carefully coordinated campaign of texts, calls, and, once she'd done a full audit of my social media, mutual friends. Reeve had a close circle, college friends, design colleagues, his cousin Ren, who I'd always liked. Within 2 weeks, I was getting messages from all of them. Had I heard? Did I know? Wasn't I being a little cold? The baby was innocent. Reeve would have wanted. That phrase, Reeve would have wanted, was doing so much heavy lifting that month it should have filed for workers' comp. And every time someone brought Sloan up, they quoted her directly, because Sloan had apparently been very busy explaining herself to anyone with ears. She told us you were his stability, that she was something different for him. She said you were his routine, she was his escape, so it's not like she was replacing you. The catchphrase was spreading, like a virus, a particularly smug virus that wore linen and smelled of oat milk. I want to pause here and address the phrase itself, because I don't think Sloan has thought through what she's actually claiming. Routines are what keep people alive. Routines are insulin and seatbelts, and the person who remembers to pay the mortgage. I was the health insurance, the warm body next to him for 4 years, the woman who showed up every single time. She was, what, a coping mechanism, an escape hatch on a submarine? Congratulations, Sloan. You were his pressure release valve. Truly romantic. I said none of this out loud. My attorney was very clear. Legally sensitive position, measured responses only, do not give her ammunition. Because here is the thing Sloan did not yet know. Reeve had a will. About a year into our marriage, my firm lost a senior partner to a sudden illness. No estate plan, complete chaos for his family for years afterward. It shook me enough that I sat Reeve down and said, "We are doing this. We each drafted wills, simple ones, real ones." What I didn't know, because Reeve had updated his 6 months before he died, without telling me, was what he'd changed. My attorney had the updated document and had been waiting for me to be ready to look at it. I wasn't ready for weeks, but her message had flagged it. There are things in here you'll want to know before Sloan's attorney contacts you. Sloan had an attorney. Of course she did. Her attorney contacted mine on a Wednesday. They were, the letter said, seeking acknowledgement of paternity and appropriate provisions for the child. Also, reading between the lines, sniffing around the condo and the estate. That Thursday, I opened the will. I read it twice. I called my attorney. She confirmed what I'd read. And then I sat back in my chair and felt, for the first time in weeks, something that wasn't grief. It felt a lot like calm. A lot of you have been asking about the will, about Sloan, and whether I'm okay. I'll answer all of it. The will first. I'm not sharing every detail because there's still active legal process, but here's what I can tell you. Reeves updated will directed his personal assets, savings, design equipment, his car, to 2 places, a design scholarship fund he'd wanted to establish, and a provision for his child, not Sloan, the child, not Sloan to support our child, not Sloan and the baby, just the child, held in a trust until age 25, administered by a named trustee. That trustee was me. I want you to sit with that. Sloan had spent 2 months explaining to anyone who would listen that she was Reeve's real love, his escape, his chosen future. And Reeve, the man having that affair, the man apparently telling her she was the one he truly wanted, had looked at his estate plan and thought, I want my wife managing my child's finances. The math, as they say, was not mathing for Sloan. 2 weeks after I read the will, Sloan came back. She'd decided enough time had passed for a serious conversation. She was further along now, clearly uncomfortable, and had traded the serene, untouchable energy for something sharper. She wanted to discuss the future, what Reeve would have wanted, how the baby would need stability, how it would be easiest for everyone to reach an arrangement outside of legal process. And somewhere in the middle of this prepared speech, she said, I am quoting, I know this is hard for you, but you were his routine. I was his escape. That doesn't make what we had less real. 9. That was 9 times, counting everything I'd heard secondhand. I looked at her. I thought about my attorney's instructions. Nothing inflammatory, no promises, do not disclose the will provisions yet. We're still finalizing. I nodded. I said I understood she was in a difficult position. I said I hoped we could handle everything through our attorneys. I offered her water. She left looking pleased with herself. Letter. What Sloan didn't know, her attorney had been briefed on the will and the trustee arrangement the day before her visit. My attorney's message that evening just said, Sloan's attorney called. Interesting conversation. I'll explain tomorrow. I slept better that night than I had in months. A lot of people are asking why Reeve would name me as trustee if he was the one having the affair. I've thought about this constantly. I think Reeve, whatever he did, was not a stupid man. He knew who was reliable with money. He knew who showed up. Maybe somewhere in the part of him that was actually paying attention, he understood the difference between an escape hatch and a foundation. That doesn't make what he did okay, but it does make me the trustee. So, here's where it gets messy. After Sloan's attorney got the full picture, the trustee arrangement, the fact that the condo was purchased with my premarital income and sat entirely outside the marital estate, things shifted. Sloan went quiet for about a week, regrouping. I was right to assume that. What I did not anticipate was the social media campaign. Sloan had a following, not large, maybe 8,000 across platforms, but engaged. She ran an aesthetic, soft lighting, meaningful captions, a whole curated identity built around authenticity and living her truth. And she began, with surgical plausible deniability, to post about her situation. Nothing direct, nothing my attorney could immediately flag, just learning that some people only want to own things, not love them. When his family chooses property over a child, you understand what he was running from. A sonogram photo captioned, "You are already more loved than you know. The world will try to make you a transaction. Don't let it." And then the one that got screenshotted and sent to me by 4 separate people. He always said she was his routine. I finally understand what he meant by that. 10. We were at 10. The comments filled up with strangers who knew nothing about me, nothing about Reeve, nothing about any of this, calling me cold, calculating, exactly the type. Several of Reeve's friends posted heart emojis in her replies. I did not respond. I did not post. I did not send a single message to a single commenter. I screenshotted everything and forwarded it to my attorney with the subject line, "For the file." And then I called my best friend Joanna and cried for 90 minutes straight. Joanna said several things about Sloan that I will not repeat here for legal reasons, but which were genuinely medicinal. The reversal came from an unexpected direction. Ren, Reeve's cousin. Ren had been sympathetic to Sloan initially, or at least hadn't pushed back. But Ren also knew Reeve better than almost anyone, and after the first real conversation she and I had since the funeral, some things came out. Sloan had been telling Reeve's friends that I had refused to support the baby, that I had threatened her at our first meeting, that I had told her directly that she would get nothing and should disappear. None of that happened. Not one syllable. Ren believed me immediately. She said she'd been noticing inconsistencies for weeks, but hadn't wanted to get involved. Now she was angry in a focused, quiet way that I recognized as someone done tolerating things. I told her what I could, not the will specifics, not mine to spread around. But enough. Over the following 2 weeks, based on what happened in that friend group, Ren had apparently had several direct conversations. The heart emojis in Sloan's comments went quiet. The baby was born 6 weeks ago. A boy. He's healthy. I know this because I am, legally, involved in his financial future. I won't pretend that is simple to sit with. It is the strangest thing I have ever had to hold. Genuine care for a child who is also, simultaneously, the proof of my husband's betrayal. But I do care. He didn't choose any of this. He gets to just be a kid. Here's what happened with Sloan. When the will was fully probated and the legal process concluded, Sloan's attorney made several attempts to renegotiate the trustee arrangement and to claim additional provisions from the estate. None succeeded. The condo was mine. The marital assets were modest and distributed as Reeve had written. The trust for the child was established exactly as specified, with me as trustee. Sloan received nothing directly. I want to be precise about this because I've seen comments suggesting I engineered some kind of outcome against her. I didn't. I didn't write the will. I didn't change the will. The will said what it said. A man who spent 18 months telling Sloan she was his escape, his real life, his chosen future. That man sat down with an estate attorney and did not write her name once. Not once. You were his routine, she told me. I was his escape. Turns out, escapes don't make it into the paperwork. I heard through Ren that when Sloan received the final breakdown from her attorney, she said, and this is secondhand, "He made me a promise. He told me I was the one he chose." And her attorney, who billed by the hour and apparently had a very limited tolerance for magical thinking, reportedly said, "He chose to write a will that gave you nothing. That is also a choice." The social media stopped after that. The soft captions about being someone's escape. The veiled references to cold women who only want to own things. The sonograms with meaningful quotes. All of it gone. What replaced it was a post about her son. Just him. His hands. How much she loved him. I didn't screenshot that one for the file. I just scrolled past it and left it alone. How am I doing? I'm somewhere in between. I'm not the person I was before any of this. I don't think I'm getting her back exactly. But I'm not the person sitting on the floor of her living room while a stranger explained her own marriage to her, either. I held the line. My home, my finances, my legal standing, without cruelty and without crumbling. I stayed precise when everything in me wanted to detonate. There's a version of me that would have screamed at Sloan that first day, slammed the door, sent the unhinged 2 a.m. text. I understand that version. I almost was that version. But I kept thinking, wait, just wait. Let the paperwork speak. Routines build things. Escapes just leave. For people asking about my relationship with the baby going forward, I'm taking it one step at a time. I'm the trustee, not the parent. I'll do my job. Beyond that, I don't know yet. I'm giving myself permission to not know.